So this webinar today will cover three main areas, and we'll answer questions under each of these areas. So we will start first by presenting the opportunity. We will do so by looking at agricultural value chains, and in particular at the agricultural last mile, which is defined as the web of relationships and transactions between buyers of crops, such as agribusinesses, cooperatives, but also middlemen in informal value chains, and of course the farmers who produce and sell their crops. We will identify potential clients and users, agribusinesses and smallholders, users of a range of digital tools really that help driving efficiencies in agricultural value chains. We will then look at how much cash is being transacted in these value chains and at the specific opportunity to digitize mobile money payments for the sale of crops from farmers to agribusinesses. So in the second part, here in the middle of the slide, we look at the implementation models. So by presenting 4 case studies, together with my colleague Nicole, we will show what kind of solutions and partnerships are emerging between different technology providers, including mobile operators and third-party or specialized tech vendors. And we will also show the solutions that different types of agribusinesses have been adopting so far. And finally, the third part of the webinar, we look at key lessons so far in agricultural value chain digitization. So starting again from digital payments to then extend to more holistic enterprise solutions for the agricultural sector. We will discuss key considerations for MNOs, tech providers, and questions they need to answer when looking at the opportunity for last mile solutions with enterprise clients. And to finish, in the final part of this webinar, we will present the key steps that service providers, including mobile operators and third-party technology providers, must take when defining their go-to-market strategy. So if we look at the first set of questions, here you have them, and the first questions really are around the opportunity to digitize the agricultural last mile. Who are the clients for last mile digitization solutions? First question. What kind of solutions do agribusinesses and farmers actually demand? How much cash is available for digitization in formal value chains? And what is the opportunity to digitize cash payments to farmers? So the first question, who are the clients for last mile digitization solutions? Now, to answer these questions, we need to look at how agricultural value chains are structured. So a value chain is the complex web of relationships and flows of information, products, transactions that take place at the different stages of the transformation of crops, which you can see here on the red boxes on the left-hand side of this diagram. So these stages are input supply, production, brokering, trading and processing, retailing, all the way to the consumer, to the final product in our consumer markets. Here it is important to say that we are focusing on the last mile. So the last mile is the web of relationships and transactions between buyers of crops, agribusinesses, cooperatives, middlemen, informal loose value chains, and the farmers who produce and sell the crops. So we're therefore looking at the bottom of this diagram and at the process whereby sellers of crops, so the farmers, interact with middlemen, cooperatives, agribusinesses. It is here in the last mile that about 1.3 million farmers produce and sell crops that account for the majority, really, according to some estimates, about 70% of the food production worldwide. So within agricultural value chains, we can distinguish 3 main models. So we have here from left to right the middleman-based informal value chains, here in the bluish boxes, and in the increasingly more formal models. Here, going left to right, we have the cooperative-based model in the middle and the vertically integrated model. The majority of exchanges and transactions in the developing world, without a doubt, take place in informal loose value chains to the left here. So here, a farmer may sell to the middleman at the farm gate or take the produce to a local open market. So most estimates put up farmers in informal value chains at between 60 to 70% of the total base, with commercial farmers selling cash crops to formal cooperatives and agribusinesses at between 30 and 40% of the base. So if we look at just at sub-Saharan Africa, commercial farmers could be around 60 to 80 million, according to an informed estimate. Then looking back at our questions, who are the clients for last mile digitization tools? I think that if we look at the red arrow on the top of this diagram, we can say that the potential is stronger as we move to the right-hand side, from the more loose value chains to the more structured and formal ones. Entry points, at least initially, are more likely to be in the formal value chains, where community organizations, the cooperatives here in the middle, or commercial agribusinesses procure crops from farmers. So here, highlighted in green, you can actually see the answer to our question. So cooperatives and agribusinesses, either local commercial businesses or larger multinational companies operating via contract farmers. These are the most likely business-to-business customers of last-mile digital tools. If we look at payments, where most digitization efforts are currently focusing, it is where farmers transact with formal buyers, really, in agricultural value chain, and when they transact directly with them, that digital payments are more likely to be implemented. Simply because for the formal buyer, the incentive to increase transparency, quality, predictability of supply, especially if they procure crops to sell in international markets, are stronger. Now let's look at what type of solution agribusinesses and farmers demand. And here in this table we have identified the six main areas of solutions where mobile technology can address some of the business challenges faced by agribusinesses and farmers. So for agribusinesses, it's important to say that the implementation of one or more of these digital tools in the last mile can lead to performance improvement, business performance improvements, and also increased productivity, cost reduction, revenue and profitability growth. These are the key benefits. For farmers working integrated in formal value chains, each of these solutions can address some specific business challenges that we have here represented in the green part of this table at the top. So starting from the left, from information services, this is the area where, as GSMA and mAgri, we have focused over the past few years with our work on agricultural value-added services. Farmers lack skills very often, and they lack access to agricultural information. And they also don't follow best practices. As opposed to MNOs or bus providers targeting directly with farmers with information services, which is what where we focused mostly over the past few years. Here we have identified an opportunity for agribusinesses to work with farmers in value chains to offer information as part of enterprise solutions. For example, to train farmers on certification standards and in general to develop their skills. So when it comes to mobile money now, the second solution here from the left, we know that cash payments are risky and costly for agribusinesses and for farmers. And to address these pain points, there is an opportunity for mobile money providers to digitize payments, business-to-person payments, but also cash transfers. We can think about government-to-person payments for agricultural subsidies. And by doing that, eventually, we can enable over time financial inclusion for farmers as they move from a cash economy to a formal economy. Now, moving to digital profiles and related, really, these areas related to digital payments, the challenge is that farmers do not possess formal economic identity. There is an opportunity for mobile technology to support the creation of those economic identities. Mobile can be used, for example, as an authentication and verification tool, and it can also be used to aggregate a range of disparate data points, transactions, data on transactions, payments, but also data on farm location obtained, for example, via GPS, or data on the farm side. So all this data can be ultimately used to assess credit worthiness for farmers. Then if we move to the right-hand side of this diagram, of this table, here we're looking at the enterprise solutions for agribusinesses that can also benefit farmers. For example, track and trace systems and farm management systems. Farm management systems support, for example, inventory management functionalities. So here we're looking at the fourth tool from the left. So what are these tools? These tools essentially respond to the need of agribusinesses to ensure full and real-time visibility, for traceability, and also for certification of goods when they source from smallholder farmers. For farmers in particular, when we focus on track and trace systems, where we're seeing more traction at the moment, track and trace systems can result for farmers in improved efficiency also, and transparency and visibility into the last mile. So these kind of tools benefit certainly the enterprise customer, but also the end user, the farmer. We can think, for example, the benefit of digital receipting for farmers that enables visibility into the transaction and the opportunity to track and trace these transactions to then access other services, for example, credit services. Another area of opportunity, if more nascent, certainly a nascent area in developing markets, is IoT applications for agriculture. So there are a range of agricultural machine-to-machine end-to-end applications. If you think about equipment logistics, sensor-based type of solutions like crops, soil, weather monitoring tools, and smart warehousing tools. We'll mention a few names of tech providers in this space in one of the next slides. And if we look at the even more futuristic or more nascent type of area, with agribusiness analytics, here to the right end of the diagram, here we are referring to solutions that, especially in developing countries, might take a little more time to come, but it's certainly an emerging opportunity. These are solutions that fundamentally leverage multiple existing data sets and integrate them with analytics capabilities. So just to give you an example of what we mean here is we have the example of precision agriculture. Precision agriculture essentially relates to observing remotely and monitoring crops and equipment and using real-time data on, for example, weather, soil conditions, to generate analytical models that can help farmers to be more efficient and make more precise decisions about planting, growing, harvesting, and transporting crops. So now, after showing the breadth of mobile solutions for the agricultural last mile, let's focus on the specific opportunity of digitizing business-to-person payments. So the question here is how much cash is available for digitization in formal value chains. So if we look at how much cash is transacted in the agricultural last mile in formal value chains at the level of procurement, like we explained before, so that is to say the total value of cash that is being paid by formal agribusinesses to farmers when buying crops. This is how the picture looks like, essentially. So together with GSMA Intelligence, here at the GSMA, the mAgri program has developed a model that estimates the total size of transactions in formal value chains, transactions that are currently in cash and are potentially available for digitization. So if we just look at the total value of this transaction, this value is globally across 71 countries, about 390 billion in 2017. We expect it to grow to 460 billion in 2020. So out of the 460 billion in 2020, we estimated about 190 million will come from emerging markets in East Asia, 150 billion from South Asia, and then if we go to the other regions, we have about 70 billion estimate from Sub-Saharan Africa and 60 billion from Latin America and the Caribbean. So if we translate this opportunity, which is about the total cash that is available for digitization, and we translate this opportunity into an opportunity for mobile money providers to actually digitize cash payments to farmers, here is how the picture looks like. If we look at the actual direct revenue opportunity for mobile money providers, which is derived from the transactional fee, which is typically 1% of the value of the transaction that is charged to mobile money users, across the 4 key development markets that we mentioned, regions that we mentioned before, mobile money providers could generate up to 2 billion in direct annual revenues in 2020. So that will be by digitizing B2B payments, business-to-person payments, excuse me, in the agricultural last mile. This could represent a significant chunk or a promising part of revenues for mobile operators, about 1.2% of total recurring revenues from MNOs, from mobile operators in developing countries, which are our key regions. So breaking down the number again by regions, this means about 900 million in 2020 in developing markets in Asia, in East Asia, just over 650 million in South Asia, 350 million in Latin America and Caribbean, and about 300 million in 2020 again. So we're talking about the end part of the forecast, the opportunity in 3 or 4 years or so, and 300 million in 2020 in Sub-Saharan Africa. So it is important to say, though, and this is a very, very important disclaimer, that this is a market ceiling. So this is not how much revenue mobile money providers are actually making. What we're presenting here is an opportunity. This is actually how much revenue they could generate, provided They benefit from an enabling environment, for example, in an enabling regulatory environment with suitable transaction limits to support business-to-person payments in agriculture, and also provided, of course, that the mobile money providers, MNOs, banks, or third-party providers, actually approach the digitization opportunity for business-to-person payments in agriculture, so exploit this opportunity fully. Now, if we move on to the next set of questions about implementation models, we're asking, who are the providers of last mile digital tools? What partnership models between solution providers have emerged? What tools are agribusinesses adopting? So the first question, who are the providers of last mile digital tools? Now I'll go back to a similar slide that I presented before, but here the intention is to show you some specific examples. So if you remember in the previous slide, we showed the 6 types of agricultural last mile solutions, which you can see here again in this diagram at the top, colored in red. So the purpose of this slide is to present specific examples of under each solutions with products that are being offered by mobile operators, the boxes in gray in the middle, so MNO-led type of solutions, or solutions that are offered by third-party providers, tech providers, so the boxes in light blue at the bottom of this paragraph. So, information services, first to the left. Here we're referring mostly to enterprise messaging platforms, so bulk messaging tools that enable agribusinesses to deliver information to farmers, the farmers that they work with. So under the MNO-led model in gray, we have as an example Vodafone's Connected Farmer, and we'll present some findings about what they do in one of the case studies later on. But there are also other non-MNO-led tech providers that allow for the dissemination of information to farmers. This has been a core business for ESOCO for some time, but there are also new service providers in this space. For example, here we mention EcoMobile, which through its communication platforms allows for the dissemination, but it also allows for the dissemination of information and communication, efficient communication from agribusinesses to farmers in African markets. Then when we look at mobile money payments, transfer, digital financial services, as mentioned before, here we have the MNOs targeting agribusinesses with bulk payment solutions in gray. We also have third parties, non-MNOs, that are enabling digital payments. So in some markets, for example in Africa, we've seen a growing number of companies specialized in digital payments, so-called aggregators, for example, in the case of Uganda, who are interconnecting. These companies effectively are interconnecting with MNOs to enable agribusinesses to pay farmers across one or multiple mobile money networks. So we'll present again a case study later in this webinar where one of these aggregators is enabling farmer payments in the last mile in Uganda. We also have non-MNO mobile money providers who can offer this type of enterprise solutions around payments. Here we can think of an interesting example that is Smart Money, which is a non-MNO mobile money provider that enables this kind of payments in East Africa in markets like Uganda and Tanzania. Digital profiles, here in the gray box on the digital profiles, we're talking about the opportunity essentially for MNOs to leverage one of their key assets, technology assets, which is mobile authentication and verification, right, to support the creation of financial profiles and economic identities for farmers. So the realization of this opportunity for MNOs hinges on the digitization of transfer and payments, right? And on the ability to leverage other data points so that they're able to create such profiles. So there are also, in this space, it's important to say that there are already a number of third-party solution providers, technology companies like Banku, AgriLedger, they use technology such as blockchain that has emerged as an enabler in this space. And with this technology, they target clients in the agricultural sector. So these solutions essentially enable transactions to be permanently recorded on a blockchain ledger and allow for secure transactions and record keeping. So moving to the right, we have track and trace and farm management systems, as mentioned before. So these are systems that allow agribusinesses to meet certification and traceability compliance. So MNO-led type of solutions in this space have emerged. And again, there is the example that we mentioned before of Vodafone's Connected Farmer. There are also a range of third-party providers who offer this type of track and trace software. And it's software that includes digital receipting, communication models, and in some cases, these kind of solutions are integrated already with mobile money, so to enable payments. An example that we're quite familiar with is a company called SourceTrace. Then we have IoT applications for agriculture, as I mentioned before. This is a space where MNOs haven't quite yet really developed a portfolio of services in developing markets. They certainly have developed these services in developed markets. So it's important to say that there are operators in emerging markets in Africa, for example, operators like Orange Business Services, that provide end-to-end services and connectivity to third parties, but they don't quite provide yet a portfolio of M2M or IoT applications for the agricultural vertical. We are seeing the emergence of a range of third-party providers with agricultural applications in the IoT space. For example, as shown in this table, Nano Ganesh has for some time offered connected water pumps, which can be activated by SMS. We have startups such as Agreeable that are emerging in the field of low-cost agricultural sensors, enabling weather and agricultural monitoring. While when it comes to weather sensors, weather monitoring, there are now a range of providers of low-cost weather stations, for example, connected low-cost weather stations. So, for example, Kukua in Africa, and there are many more. Finally, in the field of agribusiness analytics, we have a range of tech providers really out there that are using big data, artificial intelligence as well, to provide real-time type of decision-making support to agribusinesses. Here we mention a few companies like Aware, agreeable, Gamaya. Amongst these, for example, we have Aware that is increasingly targeting developing markets with its technology. And their technology essentially uses analytics to offer to an agribusiness agronomic advisory that changes dynamically and in real time depending on weather patterns. So, after covering a few examples of providers of last-mile digital tools, what partnership models between solution providers have emerged? So, to answer this question, we can say that at a general level, it is possible to identify broadly two models. And these are the two models under which last-mile digital tools can be offered to agribusinesses. So, under a third-party led model, here to the left, and this model is currently prevalent, I would say, a range of third-party tech providers in this model, tech providers with different skills and capabilities, use the core assets of one or more mobile operators, of course connectivity, mobile money, to develop their own digital solutions and then market these solutions directly to agribusinesses. You have the core assets that are key assets of the MNOs at the bottom of this diagram. And to the right-hand side, some core assets that are MNO assets, but also potentially assets of third-party tech providers. So an alternative model to this one, and that's shown here on the right-hand side, is a model whereby the MNO partners in a given market with one or more tech providers to package a white label solution, we can imagine, or a co-branded solution for an agribusiness customer. So if we look at the benefits of each model described here, it is clear that a benefit of the third-party led model is the agility of small tech firms to upgrade and also to customize solutions to enterprise customer, to the needs of the enterprise customer. On the downside, it is clear that the fragmentation of the ecosystem means that agribusinesses looking to implement multiple digital tools that are working with multiple tech providers essentially will have to manage different solutions and different provider relationships. On the other end, a key benefit of the MNO-led model is the potential to aggregate multiple solutions in a suite of services. And that's quite clear. With the MNO leveraging, of course, the key potential is that the MNO leverages its scale, brand, existing enterprise relationships to become a one-stop shop for the enterprise customer. It is important to say here that even in the case of the third-party led model, an effective relationship and possibly a strategic engagement with the MNO are quite important. For example, if we think about mobile money payments, business-to-person payments in agricultural last mile, it is clear that the success of this type of initiatives is really dependent on the active participation and on the support of one or more mobile money providers. In particular, if we think at the key, if we look at the key foundation and the key foundational elements really of mobile money networks, which are the sales and distribution network, liquidity management, and also issues like control over mobile money pricing, all areas where the MNO has control and visibility and therefore is needed as, at the very least, even as a partner in the third party-led type of model. Of course, the MNO is needed as a strategic partner and a strategic engagement. So, which of these tools are agribusinesses actually adopting? I'd say that depending on multiple factors like the type of agribusiness in question, the size of the agribusiness, the level of technology literacy in the agribusiness and the farmer base, we are seeing different types of enterprise clients taking up different tools. With cooperatives, we are mostly seeing the emergence of basic bulk payments that allow for the business essentially to pay large numbers of farmers via mobile money and at regular intervals. We're also seeing interest from cooperatives for bulk messaging platforms that allow for more efficient communication with smallholder farmers. And they allow such communication by distributing, for example, information on what input to use and agronomic tips to cooperative members. But if we look at larger commercial agribusinesses that sell into the local markets here in the middle of this table, we are seeing a similar demand really as the demand that we're seeing from cooperatives, or the opportunity that we're seeing for cooperatives for these basic payments and information dissemination tools. However, it is clear that even in the case of local commercial agribusinesses, when they are linked to international markets and there is pressure to ensure certification and traceability compliance, these bulk payments and bulk messaging platforms simply are unlikely to be enough. So we're seeing the need really to extend these systems to support traceability, and there are now plenty of solution providers who are offering mobile-enabled track and trace solutions to agribusinesses. So this is the case also with large multinational companies who source from smallholder farmers. We can think about companies such as Olam, Cargill, Nestle, and where there is really a need in some cases for solutions that extend also to IoT, which is here indicated in this table on the right-hand side. It's fair to say, important to say that while we're seeing the emergence of different models and cooperatives and larger and commercial agribusinesses taking up different tools, we are not seeing quite yet holistic enterprise solutions that integrate in one platform information, digital payment, track and trace systems, and farm management systems, and IoT. Although certainly I would say that is the direction where solution providers eventually will head to over time. Now, before we continue, here is just a reminder to please send us your questions. We will take your questions. We will answer some of them at the end. We won't be able to answer all of them, but we'll certainly try to get back to you via email over the next few days to answer some of the questions that we don't cover today. Now, to conclude this section on implementation models, let's look at a few case studies. So here I have a first case study that is really about a mobile money bulk payment solution for the agriculture sector, which is in this case offered by UTL, Uganda Telecom. This is an example of a solution that targets cooperatives, in this case coffee farmer cooperatives, but also different types of small to medium agribusinesses who employ salaried workers, for example in the sugar value chain in the case of Uganda. So this platform offered by UTL, Uganda Telecom, has a web interface with bulk payment functionalities that enables the staff of the cooperative or the agribusiness staff to make one-touch type of disbursements to recipients. It also enables to run statement reports for transactions and send SMS reminders when transactions are completed. So this kind of solution addresses the need of the cooperative and the agribusiness to pay farmers in a more secure and less costly way. And the key pain point here that we're addressing is the fact that through this solution, the cooperative doesn't have to transport cash for long distances, which also has an impact on cost. So the two key features of this type of solution, I'd say, are and which have helped this solution to move from pilot to a commercial deployment. The two key features have been really the use by the MNO of its intelligent mobile money platform that allows for preferential pricing to farmers, and also the fact that the MNO has been involved in enrolling farmers and has been mobilizing and training farmers and agribusiness staff. So when it comes to preferential pricing, this has been quite important for this deployment. So UTL's mobile money platform enables the MNO to zero rate bulk disbursement fees for business to person payments that are processed from the agribusiness to farmers. So therefore, the MNO is able to offer preferential rates for the farmers who have been enrolled in the B2P schemes. In their case, up to 40% reduction in the withdrawal fee to stimulate adoption, obviously. When it comes to the farmer and to enrolling the farmer and below the line type of marketing that is being driven forward by the MNO to stimulate this pilot initially, UTL has been the lead party of specific mobilization programs for farmers, and these programs have been implemented in partnership with agribusinesses and have provided demonstration on mobile money usage for new users. And this has been particularly important considering that large chunks or large proportion of farmers did not own a mobile phone, and these were the majority of the farmers not owning a mobile phone, or most of them not being already mobile money users. So, as another case study, here we take the example, and if you think about one of the previous slides, of a solution that can support a medium to large agribusiness. So in this case, we have a digital tool that is offered also in Uganda by Yo, a provider of mobile value-added services, digital payment solutions. Yo has developed a solution that essentially integrates the basic bulk payments platform of the mobile operator, the platform that very similar to the one that we just discussed in the case of UTL. So they have integrated, in this case, with MTN, with the mobile money service of MTN, and they integrate with the pre-existing procurement and financial accounting system of the agribusiness. In this case, the agribusiness is a Ugandan agribusiness called Kyagalani Coffee, which is part of an international group that procures and exports coffee internationally. So when compared to a basic bulk payment platform, this kind of solution is representative of a more holistic approach to agricultural last mile digitization. So the digitization of payments here is still at the core of the solution, but a number of other key functionalities really are helping the agribusiness to improve overall last mile efficiency and better manage farmer relations. So besides making payments, the platforms allows Kyagalani to store data on producers, for example, farm location, acreage, transaction history, which is used to create what they call cumulative buying record for the farmer. And all this data is used to calculate production estimates, essentially, for the agribusiness, for the farmers enrolled in the scheme. So in addition, I would say that also for certification and traceability purposes, the platform stores data on soil quality, type of coffee that is produced in each farm. So while we can't talk in this case of a fully fledged track and trace solution, it is clear here that there is an opportunity to offer a more holistic solution, and a more holistic solution really that one that only supports bulk payments. And to extend really the value proposition to track and trace and last mile supply chain management. So again, like in the previous case study, to support this solution, it has been important to leverage the MNO capability, particularly to offer preferential tariffs. The MNO, in this case MTN, has agreed almost a 40% reduction on the fee for bulk payment disbursements. And this has been critical to support the agribusiness in the early stages of deployment. So now let me hand over to my colleague Nicole, who is going to tell us about 2 other case studies. Over to you.
Thanks, Daniele. So hi everyone, glad to be on the line here with you today. So we're going to move away a bit from Uganda, and I'm going to show you 2 case studies that have been deployed a bit more broadly in Africa. So the third use cases today that we're going to look at might be familiar to quite a few of you, is the connected farmer solution. So I should mention that this is, for us at least, that we've seen as a pioneering solution for agribusiness digitization solution led by an MNO. So a bit in a nutshell, what is Connected Farmer? So it's an MNO-led solution developed by Vodafone, own company Mezzanine, which is a tech provider specialized in mobile-enabled products in Africa. This solution is commercialized by Vodafone's enterprise team, which is actually a very important point that we'd like to make as well, is that actually Vodafone itself in-house has developed an enterprise team that is pushing this platform to its different clients in the agricultural sector. So Connected Farmer is a business-to-business solution, most importantly for contract farmers, and it's aimed at strengthening the agribusiness interaction with smallholders. It's currently live in Kenya as well as Mozambique and Tanzania, though it has seen, say, more adoption in Kenya, but efforts to push it as well in the 2 countries in East Africa have been continuously, I'd say, renewed. The solution is customizable depending on the agribusiness client. What does this mean? So the solution can actually be deployed to multiple value chains, though to date there's been more of a push to onboard agribusinesses that are more focused on cash-driven crops, such as tea, coffee, and nuts. Why is that? This is where transactions, so mobile money transactions, for example, are a bit more frequent. So we won't cover into all of the features, but we can highlight a few of them. So first of all is that Connected Farmer uses mobile money core capabilities. So for example, M-Pesa, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. The platform allows for digital payments and more interestingly as well, the issuance of e-receipts. So for example, a farmer can receive an SMS to actually let them know how much has been sold and how much are they getting from that transaction. Another important point is that a bit more broader than just the Ugandan examples, for example, that Daniele just mentioned, is that it's also a farm management database. So it enables access to a portal, for example, for field staff to input key farmer information, which then helps build, say, analytics that will then enable the agribusiness to predict a bit more the supply of production that might be coming their way. And then another important tool is that it enables communication, so in a direct line between farmers and field staff. So when you think of, for example, extension work agents that might need to disseminate information across their network of farmers, this is quite a good solution as it enables bulk messaging. Looking ahead, we're now moving into another model, which is presented by Olam. So we call it a third-party led solution, even though it's an agribusiness-owned solution. So what is Olam? A digital tool for last mile. So Olam has developed an in-house tool that is called Olam Farmers Information System. By short, we're going to call it Office. That supports the multinationals' needs to complete targets for their sustainability and traceability programs. What does this mean? So essentially, the system replaces data that was collected via pen and paper. The tool now collects this information at the farm gates, such as GPS coordinates of the farmer's lands, as well as the production and other key data points, which are all recorded via an Android app, which all this information can then be synced with a web platform. So that provides an interface into what's going on in the field. So actually, you have a screenshot in the slide that you can see what this web interface looks like on the back office for the agribusiness. Again, courtesy of Olam. So this tool is also used actually by the field staff to deliver training and key instructions for farmers to follow best practices, Again, we're re-emphasizing here traceability and certification, because this is exactly what Olam is deploying the solution for, is really to ensure that certificate requirements are being met, and these certificate requirements can be met if best practices are disseminated across their farmer network on how, for example, to cultivate your plant, which fertilizer to use, and so on and so forth. So far, the system has enrolled about 100,000 farmers in 21 countries. Although we should mention that, for example, in terms of priority value chains, it's currently been mostly focused on farmers that are in cocoa, coffee, rubber, and cashew nuts value chains. We haven't really talked about digital payments for Office, mostly because so far it hasn't been, I would say, fully integrated across its different subsidiaries. But it is worth mentioning that, for example, digital payments can be integrated into the system, so Office via an API, and this actually provides a very exciting future use case for this tool, which we'll definitely be sharing more insights if and when it happens. To finalize, a bit of key distinctions between Connected Farmer and Olam, because they're both owned by the provider that offers the service. So Connected Farmer is largely driven by the mobile network operator, so Vodafone core capabilities, for example, the messaging as well as the mobile payments. For example, for Olam, this initiative to deploy Office is mostly to comply to sustainability and traceability requirements. So, for example, we see a push of, for example, consumers like us wanting to know more and more where the production or the food that we consume, where it comes, so tracked all the way down to the farmer. Finally, but not least, so Connected Farmer is being licensed for a fee, while Olam is actually disseminated across their subsidiaries, mostly in Africa, but the plan is to roll out worldwide. So yeah, I think that concludes our 4 case studies.
Thank you, Nico. So after these case studies, and let's look at the final set of questions, the final part of this webinar. Key questions here are: what are the key lessons in digitizing payments so far? How do you identify enterprise clients if you're a tech provider or an MNO, and clients of holistic last mile solutions? And what are the key steps for a successful go-to-market strategy? So, in terms of key learnings, we, as GSMA and mAgri, have looked for some time at digitizing payments, business-to-person payments in value chains, in agricultural value chains. And I would say that we have learnings at the 3 main areas. So there are some learnings that go really under the foundational elements of mobile money, and here presented on the left of this slide. And these are around really the need to research and understand how value chain works in order to identify where formal procurement takes place, who the potential customers of enterprise solutions are, and in what value chains they operate. So understanding how value chain works means understanding what type of transactions are performed in these value chains, as in, for example, the average size and the frequency of transactions, and really whether mobile money is well suited when considering payments to support transactions. Then, of course, as mentioned earlier, what we've seen so far is that when it comes to payments, MNO, the strategic engagement of the MNO is really required to ensure liquidity at the point of cash withdrawal from farmers. And that generally functioning and efficient sales channels for mobile money are needed, of course, to support mobile money payments. So some of our other learnings in digitizing payments are more around pricing of mobile money to the end user. This is really one of the key factors for adoptions, and we're really seeing the need for cost mitigation strategies. What we've seen so far is that MNOs are prepared to offer preferential pricing to stimulate adoption, as shown in the case studies presented earlier. And also we've seen that agribusinesses have been prepared to take on the cost of mobile money for farmers, of course, provided that digital payments offer them enough value in terms of reduced cost and also increased efficiency. Also, we've seen, we have, I would say, sort of aggregated key lessons around the mobile money service ecosystem. here to the right hand side and of this slide. And the type of use cases that are more in demand from farmers and that should be considered to stimulate adoption of mobile money once really B2P payments have been implemented. So here what we've seen so far is that farmers recognize the value of mobile money for cash management, which is to say essentially saving money. While credit services, clearly credit in general is obviously a key need for farmers. Our insights so far from farmers enrolled in digitization initiatives show that they appreciate the prospect of storing securely cash and using the mobile money account to store cash. So therefore, the mobile money wallet becomes in fact a saving tool as opposed to storing real cash at home. Our field research also shows that managing money through a mobile money account has potential to instill a responsible financial behavior, and we've seen that from other organizations that are looking at the space, for example, CGAB. So really, mobile money has potential to instill responsible financial behavior, and which is really opposed as the process whereby farmers receive large lump of sums of cash in hand and feel they have to spend it immediately. So from our research, we've seen that farmers appreciate the value of mobile money also to process secure and remotely a range of person-to-business payments. These are utilities, school and health fees, primarily. For schools fees, for example, we have seen that time wasting and theft are major issues for rural families who pay these fees in cash. So what this shows really is that once person-to-business payments are digitized, mobile money providers should really consider developing this type of use cases to stimulate over time adoption beyond farmer cashing out as they receive a payment. So, coming to an end almost of this webinar, how do you know, do you as an MNO or tech provider targeting the agricultural vertical, how do you identify enterprise clients for last mile solutions? So this is how the pathway to find the user or the client of last mile digital solution looks like in our view. Here essentially we want to highlight the process, and along the process the quick questions that a solution provider must ask. By asking these questions, you may find as a solution provider that early adopters of last mile digital tools really may only require basic solutions, for example, bulk payments or messaging platforms. Eventually, this kind of process can lead to the identification of customers that are looking for more holistic enterprise platforms. So as mentioned earlier, really the first steps in this process should be around asking questions that help really whoever is developing a solution understand the suitability of value chains for digitization. Competition is very important as well, asking questions and understanding the level of competition in the value chain, particularly for cash crops where agribusinesses procure from the same farmers and where farmer loyalty, so having farmers returning to sell their crop, is a business need for buyers. Then it is important over time to understand if agribusinesses face or not the pressure to adhere to certification and sustainability requirements, and evaluate whether more holistic solutions beyond payments may be needed. Obviously, a key factor to consider in order to understand what type of enterprise clients might be needing which solution is technology readiness. Technology readiness of the agribusiness staff, of the field and back office operations, but also of the farmers, of course. Eventually, when we evaluate the opportunity to scale services, the size of the agribusiness client and whether they operate across multiple value chains or procure from large bases of farmers, informal value chains, are all key factors to consider. So if a tech provider or an MNO work with large agribusiness clients, there can be an opportunity eventually to extend the value proposition to more holistic platforms and scale up these solutions. So our final question is therefore around the go-to-market strategy. Here you can see in this slide the key steps in service design process and the user feedback loop that is needed to iterate the product over time after launch. This is the same framework, by the way, that we have been using for mAgri information services that we continue to use for digitization. Initially, in the plan phase, it is important to assure clear owners and partners, as well as internal support at the level of the agribusiness, but also the tech provider. Then if we move along this framework left to right, in the learn phase, particularly, it's important to perform a proper value chain assessment, as we mentioned before, and eventually identify the kind of agribusinesses who would be the clients and the users of last mile digital tools. At the point of developing the service, it is fundamental to keep the user really at the center of the process, understand existing processes, identifying the pain points and the gain points potentially, and then prioritizing opportunities for service design. It is at this stage that really a service provider must design for evolution, here under create, which means essentially that the service designer is able to incorporate over time additional features and modules depending on the client needs and eventually extend into more holistic solutions. Finally, at the maintain phase, after creating the service and assigning key performance indicators, farmer KPIs, agribusiness and service provider KPIs to measure the success of the service, it is fundamental to iterate the product over time, and resources should be really balanced between improving the current service and introducing new features over time. Successive iterations over time will capture new insights from farmers and the agribusinesses. And eventually, this kind of iterations really, and we've seen that in our work on Agribus, really inform the new or updated value proposition. So just to say, I think in the end, that it's very important to say that a successful service will be able to incorporate the user feedback loop, which you can see here in the dotted line. Incorporating user feedback essentially as part of the service design process means including all the different users of last mile digital tools, which in this case, when we talk about agricultural value chain digitizations, are the agribusinesses, the field, the office staff, the back office, the farmers, but also other key users. So when we look at payments, as we mentioned before, as an entry point for digitization, we, for example, have to look at mobile money agents, who are critical users as well in these initiatives. So this was the last slide about our lessons learned so far and around the roadmap for digitization. Just before we come to the end of this webinar, we open the floor, and we started a little bit late. We're running also a little bit late, but we might be able to take a couple of questions. So before we come to the end of this webinar and take the questions, let me very quickly remind you about some resources that you may find interesting. And last year we published the report Market Size and Opportunity in Digitizing Payments in the Agricultural Value Chains. This is where the focus on business-to-person and government-to-person payments that I mentioned before come from. More recently, last month, we published the market level report on Uganda, opportunities in agri-value chain digitization. The case studies that we presented are included in that report. We have more publication coming. At the moment, we have 2 colleagues in the team who are conducting field research in Ghana. 2 market level case studies will be shortly available on our websites, one on Cote d'Ivoire and one on Ghana, 2 strong mobile money markets where we're seeing the emergence of mobile money payments. And we also aim to release early next year an extensive digitization toolkit for industry practitioners. So finally, if you're interested in our resources, look at our website, but also you can subscribe to our newsletter via our website, and here you have the link. So this slide really concludes our webinar today. So we're now left with a few minutes to answer questions that have come through the audience today. My colleague Matt was noting down a few of these questions. So one that we have is about Kiagalani, is referring to the case study that we presented before in Uganda. So Kiagalani, the coffee company that is working with MTN and Yo to digitize payments. And the question is Kiagalani using track and trace? And if not, what is the hold up? So I will say briefly, just to answer this question, I think we find that specific example interesting because it's not quite a track and trace system. It is a bulk payment platform, like in the case of UTL and some of the other deployments that we've seen. So it's a pretty basic bulk payment platform. But what is very interesting is that we are already at a stage with that specific deployment whereby a number of data points that are effectively needed by the agribusiness for traceability and certification purposes are being collected through the platform. It's not quite an intelligent platform at the moment that enables real-time visibility for traceability and certification, but what the platform already does is to collect through a number of Excel spreadsheets that are located on the platform information that is used for traceability and certification needs. One key element, one key data point there is, one key functionality or function of these data points is the so-called cumulative buying record. So for the agribusiness, it's very important to collect a number of data points about estimates on smallholder productivity, expected amount of production for the specific season, in order to then assess the cumulative buying record and plan accordingly over the seasons. So essentially, the reason why we presented this case study and we highlighted and we presented this as a bit more than a bulk payment solution is because effectively it's a last mile solution that is already collecting this information. The next step will be to have more of a real-time type of solution supporting track and trace. Now we are also receiving other questions. So there is one around connected farmers. So all crops are high value or value-added crops. What is, in your experience, in the space of commodity like maize, beans, potatoes, the difference between formal and informal value chains? Is this what this question is referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
our focus has been on the formal.
Yes, so I would say there is a question around what type of value chains are formal versus what value chains are more informal, right?
It's more about have we seen any activity in the maize, beans, or the informal area?
Okay, we were reformulating the question. Okay, so I would say our focus is definitely, as Matt is saying, on the formal and cash crops. The reason for that is, as we explained in one of the slides before, we presented the generic structure on an agricultural value chain. Of course, in terms of socioeconomic impact, there is a huge opportunity to target digitization solutions at informal and loose value chains. That's where you can have initially most impact. And this question refers to maize, beans, this type of crops, commodity crops that are obviously very widely cultivated in emerging markets. But obviously, targeting digital interventions at informal value chains initially is very challenging because these value chains are extremely fragmented. It's also very difficult. The key question here would be, how do you identify, as an MNO or a tech provider targeting this type of solution, how do you identify your clients? Because essentially these value chains are structured around the middlemen. Farmers sell directly to open markets. So we have seen a number of micro type of deployments that target specific interventions as well in informal value chains, but it's kind of challenging really to foresee scalable solutions at the moment in informal value chains. This is why we're focusing more on the formal value chains, where there is a clear target segment, a clear potential client, which is the cooperative or the agribusiness, to sell these solutions to. I think it's fair to say that probably initially we are targeting farmers who are a little bit better off because they are included in informal value chains. Although this is not always the case. If we think about coffee farmers, for example, in Uganda, pretty much the majority of farmers in this country, in a country like Rwanda, are integrated or included in this value chain, which is a formal value chain. So it's not necessarily only the farmers who are, let's say, it's not necessarily the farmers who are better off for including informal value chains. In some cases, you have farmers who also operate in commodity-based crops, but also in subsistence crops across different subsegments of the farmer community. So I think this is really the reason why we are initially focusing on formal value chains. Over time, once business models and services are clearly emerging, addressing clients and customers and users in formal value chains, there is an opportunity to extend these solutions, and we of course believe that over time there will be an opportunity to extend these solutions to also informal value chains. Okay, so there is a last call for questions now. I think we are running a little bit over time. We also started a little bit later, but we don't want to keep you for too long. We really appreciate your time joining us today. If you have questions, please keep sending the questions. We will collect those and we will aim to get back to you by email. It's very good for us as well to establish a conversation with you and answer and clarify any of your questions. I hope you enjoyed this webinar. As mentioned initially, this is being recorded. It will be available on our website together with the slides. So please go and visit the website for this webinar and all other resources that we have available for you. From me and Nicole and the team, goodbye and thank you for joining us today.